So, we are continuing a series we're calling Stop. And one of the things that is leading to this is that we live in a culture not just set against God's word, but that really doesn't have our best interest at mind either. And so as we go through our life, we can get caught up in the rat race. Now, this is not a rat, this is a ferret, which are way more fun than rats. But so, every week we have an animal in a hammock, and this week it just happens to be a ferret. You can Google spiritual implications of being a ferret. There really wasn't any there. It just was fun. Like, isn't he cute? Right? One thing I know, because at one point up at Timberlake Ranch Camp, one of the wranglers had a ferret. And ferrets like to do two things. One is they like to snuggle close. They like to be held, and they just like to crawl, like get in your armpit and put their head over here and all that kind of stuff. And the other thing is they love to just bolt. They just run away, right? Well, we're like that, aren't we? We like to bolt. And what we've been talking about in terms of Sabbath, we're going to get into the law today, but Sabbath is not a rule to be kept. It is an opportunity to fellowship with God, to draw close to God. Given to Adam and Eve as an example in the garden, God would walk with them. He would spend time with them before there was any sin in the world. And then as the law is given, we see the pattern. God says, on 6 days God worked, and on the seventh he rested. And we're like, yeah, but we're better than God. We'll just work all 7, maybe for a month straight. Now, you don't consciously think that, but that's how we live, isn't it? We chase stuff, and we chase the world's stuff. And today, when we look at Deuteronomy chapter 4, 5, touch 6, we want to stop and see why God tells us to stop. Why should we keep the Sabbath? Today, the word is observe. And the word observe has to do with how we see things. But the word observe, as it's used in the command, is make sure you do it. Observe it. Like, observe the speed limit. Right? We all want to, just lost half the crowd right there. Observe the speed limit. It's a suggestion. I'm driving to Des Moines today. Believe me, I wish there wasn't a speed limit. Wouldn't matter in my Jeep anyway, but that's another story. What is the context of God giving us his commands? And if you're a student of the Bible, if you'll just bear with me here, we're going to read Deuteronomy 4, 1 through 9. We're going to read, and then we're going to revisit, and then we're going to review. Okay, so there's your 3 R's if you're into Bible study. Deuteronomy 4, Moses now to the next generation. This is not repeated to the people who heard it from Sinai, although maybe many of them were children there, right? Because that generation that heard the law at Sinai, what happened to them? They died, okay? They died in the wilderness for their disobedience, okay? Moses, in fact, in this context, is going to tell them, by the way, I messed up, so I don't get to go in either. But here's the context of God giving us his commands. Okay, so I'm going to read Deuteronomy 4, 1 through 9. We're going to come back and review 7, 8, and 9, and just focus on this for a second. Now, Israel, Moses says, listen to the statutes and the rules that I'm teaching you, and do them that you might live. Okay, doesn't stop there. You might live, go in and take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you. You shall not add to the word that I commanded you, nor take away from it. You may keep the commandments of the Lord your God that I commanded you. Your eyes have seen, verse 3, what the Lord did at Baal Peor. By the way, they're camped right under Baal Peor right now, their second time around. You have to go back and visit our Numbers study to realize what happened at Baal Peor. Okay, it has to do with the Edomites, Moabites. That's on the internet somewhere. All right? You saw with your own eyes what God did. For the Lord your God destroyed from among you all the men who followed the Baal of Peor. But you who held fast to the Lord your God are all alive today. See, I've taught you the statutes and rules as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do them in the land that you're entering to take possession of it. Keep them and do them, for that will be your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, who when they hear all these statutes will say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has a God so near to it as the Lord our God is to us whenever we call upon him? And what great nation is there that has statutes and rules so righteous as all this law that I set before you today? Only take care. Keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things that your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. And now you're going to go in there, and I'm not coming with you, so pay attention to what's going on here. But let's go back and just look at verse 7 and 8. What other people is there anywhere who has a God like ours? Anyone? No. I saw, this is very common apologetic, but, all these other gods require something of you, and our God gives his own son to you. Every other God, every other religion requires you to work to hopefully achieve. And our God says, come, chill with me. The only way to get there is through Jesus. But you're invited, everyone. We talked about this last week. It's open to everyone. Come, you who are thirsty, Isaiah 55. Come to the waters. Come buy bread and milk without any money. Everybody can come. You just got to come. Who has a God like us? Moses says, this Lord God, all you have to do is turn to him and he's there. What nation is there that has rules like ours? Oh, wait, we don't like rules. The word that's used to describe these rules is that they're righteous. And when other people look at those rules later on, they're going to say, wow, those people are so wise because they follow those rules. God gave his people his commandments because among all the people of the earth, those who are his, insert your name, you have the opportunity to be different from everybody else. So that even when you're participating in the things of the world, you're doing it for a different reason, and the rest of the world looks at you and goes, something different about them? That's right here in Deuteronomy. Does anybody else have laws and rules like I'm setting before you today? The answer is no. All right? Quick theology. God, who is unlike any other God, has made you a people like no other people. Okay? You want to be Dave Ramsey, it's live like no one else so you can live like no one else, all right? He's unlike anything else, and he's made you his people like anything else, and he's given you his laws, his rules, his ways, so that you can be like nobody else, because his laws are different than all the other laws. And that depends on how you look at them. That's what we're talking about today. If you just see them as rules, they're no different than anybody else's. But these laws are given that we might live and that God's blessing might be on us and that we might be in fellowship with him. And when the rest of the world looks at us, they go, something different about those people. This is not about rule keeping. God has invited us to come to him, and we need to see what he tells us differently. Because he is different. And what he has said is different. So that we are different. Are you tracking? God gave us his rules not so that we could follow the letters. Now, I'm not telling you to stretch the speed limit. But the intent of God's rules, which are righteous, is that we would be different. We who know him. Who else has a God like ours? We just sang it. Nobody. How great is our God? There's none like him. I'm sorry if you're a rule keeper. We're going to just step on your toes a little today. The rules are there. The words are given. The commands, which the Hebrew there means he spoke these things, not write this down in a code and make sure Congress enforces it and the courts adjust. That's not the idea. But the things that God has told us, and this is both at Mount Sinai and here in Deuteronomy, are for our lives. For our lives to be different. So this is the context. Okay? So take care. Make sure you do this. And come back to that word, take care. If you have a bulletin, down in the next point, it says it's the same Hebrew word, and it is. This take care, guard your heart, the wisest man who lived said. Guard your mind, your heart, your eyes, how you look at things, how you relate to things. Line them up with God's way. The consequence of not doing that is you will forget the things your eyes have seen. He's talking to a generation that has grown up in the wilderness, that saw bread fall from the sky and meat fall from the sky every day as they needed it. But you and I will worry about our next paycheck. Has God provided for us? Is God providing for us? They saw God conquer their enemies. Vastly outnumbered. Stupid military strategies. Not stupid. Stupid. If you had Mr. Lobby. Foolishness, and God prevails. So God provide water from rocks. Saw God protect and provide. And then, that generation, their parents got to the line and it was time to cross over. They're like, well, God's done a lot of stuff, but those people are pretty big. We better not go in there. They're like giants. Okay, you won't. Object lesson 1, next generation now hearing this, don't forget what God has done. When you go into the land, look what it says about it. You forget what your eyes have seen and it will leave your heart. When we don't rehearse what God has done, it leaves our heart. And when our heart doesn't have that in it, we look for other things to put in our heart. So here's your Sabbath tool. Remember what God has done. You want to get close to God? Put those things he's done into your heart. Reflect on them, rehearse them, tell others about them. Don't leave room in there for your heart to go, boy, I sure wish I had a bigger boat. Refer to last week's sermon. Man, if only I had. What has God done for us? And then, by the way, this is a statute to make known to your children and your children's children. I'll just call them out. We're just celebrating the second row this weekend because their grandparents have passed it on to their children and their children's children. Now it's on you. Married, almost married. Make them known to your children and your children's children. This whole context, these whole 3 chapters, as he's presenting the law, he doesn't get to the law till chapter 6. But he's telling them, here's why. Here's why it's important. Let me jump down. We're not going to look, it's not going to be on the screen, but verse 20. Chapter 4, verse 20. But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace of Egypt to be a people of his own inheritance, as you are to this day. You kids, you've been pulled out of slavery too. You might have been too young to even engaged in slavery when you were back there, but you've been taken out of the iron furnace. Okay, it immediately calls to mind another story about a furnace, right? 3 little Hebrew boys who wouldn't bow their knee because God said don't, and they obeyed, and they end up in a furnace, and that was the end of them. They were nice kids. No. Okay, how did they survive the iron furnace? Who was in there with them? An angel. I'll take both answers. Jesus. My 5-year-old. Some of you adults got to catch on. All right. You know the story. Shadrach, Meshach, and to bed we go, right? The Bible story you tell your kids. Some of you will catch that when you have kids. All right. You've been taken out of the furnace because God made you his inheritance. That's the God who's asking you to stop when we get there. Remember, observe the Sabbath. The God who has rescued you. How do we see God, though? How do we see God? Let's flip to chapter 5. All right, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. Chapter 5, here we get to the 10 Commandments. Chapter 5 and verse 6. Well, first let's go back. Verse 6 says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Chapter 5, verse 6. Well, there's this God up in the sky who makes a bunch of rules. Okay, who's this being told to? The kids of the people who didn't obey the rules. And he's just rehearsed everything God has done for them, which we need to do. And he's going to tell this generation, don't forget. What do I not forget? That he's the God who took me out of the iron furnace, that he's the God who rescued me out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Because he loved your fathers. Because he loved them, he brought them out. Because he loves us, he's going to bring us in. Stay with me. I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of land of slavery. Do you see God as somebody who rescued you or as somebody who has demands for you? A couple weeks ago in my home church, there was a funeral for a man named Mike Olds. And I was probably in 5th or 6th grade. We were having a church picnic like we did. We'd go up to, actually it was my classmate's family. The other memory I have of the Rupp family farm was plucking chickens. And we had the job. We weren't given the fun jobs. For some reason, they didn't give the 6th graders weren't given the axe, to remove the head. We were given the job of chasing them and holding them against the rubber thing that plucked all their feathers, which was the messiest, ugliest, dumbest job. But that's what we got as 6th graders. So that's my other memory of this. But we were at that particular lake home, and we're having a church picnic, and there were going to be baptisms later and whatever. And this is a place where, so at the time I was on the swim team in junior high, and Paul was on the swim team through all of high school. We would take the family pontoon boat out. Now, it wasn't one of these pontoons like you have today. Like this had the 10-horse 1947 Mercury on the back, and it weighed about 6,245 pounds. And so it went like 3 miles an hour across the lake, right? So we would take that. Several of us would go out there on a regular occasion. Paul would be driving the boat, and then we would jump off the front of the boat. Like not directly straight forward, but we'd jump off to the side. And the game was to jump and then swim and then try and catch the back of the pontoon as it went by, climb back up while it's still running through the lake, prop spinning and all of that, because the Lord has preserved us all these many years. So, point being, been in this lake a million times, been off their dock a million times, been around the lake, been on, dumb things. So, church picnic's going on, and we decided we're going to swim from the swimming beach over to the dock, which was probably no further than here to the back door. This is not a big deal. By the way, this lake is one of those lakes, more like a Nebraska lake than a Minnesota lake, where when you go down, another fun thing we used to do is you used to go down and bring part of the bottom up with you, which was something off the Exxon Valdez. Mud mixed with slime and would leave a little oily thing on the top of the water. So we would, throw that at each other. We had all kinds of fun out of this lake. Well, this particular church picnic, we're going to swim from here to there just because. And we're taking a shortcut, and there's these lily pads and weeds and such, and one of them wraps itself around my leg. Don't know how to this day. But I'm literally in 5.5 feet of water, but I can't get my feet below me, and I'm only 5'6" at the time. I can get out of the water just enough for my eyes to clear, but not enough for my mouth to clear. And there's nothing to push off on the bottom, because when you go to the bottom, you go into the goo. So I'm splashing around. I'm drowning. And I don't even, at the time, remember I'm drowning, I'm I got to figure this out. I can see everybody. And one of the times I come up, and it was within 2 bobs, okay? One time I come up and I see this guy coming from my right. And I'm seeing the light and all of that. No, it was just the sky. But here comes this guy, it's Mike. And Mike is stripping his shirt off. He always wore cowboy shirts, but he strips his shirt off and just comes running in. He's the older brother of one of my classmates who's also swimming with us. And he grabs me, and he's standing there. Now, he's 6'4". So the difference between 6'4" and 5'6" is enough that he has zero problem standing and breathing. But I'm just this far from death. And Mike grabs me, and he pulls me up with one arm, and he reaches underneath, and he grabs the weeds, and he pulls them out by the roots, and he carries me to shore. Mike passed away from a kidney disease here about 2-3 weeks ago, and they had his funeral. That story didn't come up, but as just reminding me, Mike rescued me. Now, Mike reminded me every time I ever saw him. Remember when I pulled you out of the lake when you were in 5th grade? Yes, Mike, thank you. Yes, Mike, thank you. But literally, I'm telling you that whole story because some of us treat God that way. Don't bring it up again, please. Don't bring up that you rescued me. It's kind of embarrassing for me that you would bring that up. I love Mike. And sadly, the brother who was my age passed of the same kidney disease or liver disease about 6 months ago. But Mike saved my life. How do I look at Mike? How do you see God? He's literally pulled you from death. And you're like, yeah, that's nice. Don't bring it up again, please. I just want to continue on with my life. I continued on the swim team, by the way, after that. It was a diving board hitting my chin that made me pick up basketball. But Mike rescued me. And I was watching his funeral the other day, and I was just hearing the testimonies of how he would serve. He would do anything for anybody. And the other part of Mike bringing it up was I didn't mind him reminding me that he'd rescued me. He always reminded me that I owed him a new pair of boots because he had brand new boots on that day. Really nice leather cowboy boots. And I told you what he was standing in. It was essentially oil mixed with manure, I think, So I owed him boots my whole life. I'm out of that debt now. How do you view God? He's the Lord your God who has saved you from death. So that's the context, okay? I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Verse 7, don't have any of their gods before me. First commandment. First commandment. Make me number one. Why? but we forget. We forget who He is. We forget what He's done. So we have these commandments and we see them, we think, oh man, that's a great list. That if I do those things, just 10 things, that's all we got to do. And none of us can. And none of us can. And we get to this one. Observe, like the speed limit, keep it. But observing it depends on how you see God.